I'm introducing my first gentleman. And he is Neil Franklin, Head of Skills Intelligence at the National Skills Academy for Rail, NSAR. And he's going to be speaking to us about the skills mix of the future and diversity for the rail sector. So Wise has enjoyed a really long relationship with the rail sector, so it's really pleasing to hear how this journey is going to continue. So, Neil, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm afraid I can't bring you any sex robots or Spider-Man, but I can bring you the rail industry. So hopefully I'm going to change some of your perceptions about rail. I suspect they're not particularly good. You might be surprised to know that we have a slight diversity problem in rail, and I'll go on to explain. But first, many of you are probably going, who or what on earth is NSAR? So NSAR is the National Skills Academy for Rail. We sit very comfortably in the centre of what we call the unholy trinity between government, academia, and employers. And our role basically is to make sure that the industry has the right skills, it has the right at the right time in order to meet the investment profile that is afforded to us by the government. So I think I have the best job in the world, Gemma. We might have a slight debate about that. So my job is basically to gaze into a crystal ball that we've developed and try and predict what skills we need. I'm also able, in doing that, to look at the profile and the demographic of the workforce that we have in rail today. So I take an industry-wide look. At the moment, rail has a slight issue. I'll give you a little picture of what diversity in rail looks like at the moment. So now clearly rail's been around for many, many decades. You can see here's some lovely pictures of our imaginative, creative, diverse workforce. Some of these photos aren't too long ago, particularly the last two. That gives you a pretty good indication of what rail is like at the moment. In terms of putting some figures behind that, I have data on about 235,000 people. 15% of them are female, or probably slightly less. Clearly that differs employer by employer. In many cases it's an awful lot worse than that. 19% are 30 or younger, 22% are 50 or older. Those stats are considerably worse for men. So you can see that I am actually the very stereotypical demographic of the rail industry. I am, to quote many of my friends, I am male, pale and stale. So clearly we're trying to change that. Well, hopefully we are anyway, although not before I retire, hopefully. So, but what we can see about the female demographic in the industry is that you're on average younger than your male counterparts, and you spread the age demographic is spread a lot more evenly. It's a lot more consistent with the UK demographic. And actually, although it doesn't say it on here, we track average skill levels, and the skill levels for females is typically higher than it is for males. That probably won't come as a surprise to most of you in the room, frankly. So why change? We've been doing this for years. We don't need to change at all. However, lots of research undertaken both by Network Rail and McKinsey, and I'm going to fly through these slides because I know I'm under time pressure. Basically says where you've got at least a 20% diversity ratio within any team, then you will generate far more positive benefits. And those benefits can be collaboration. They can be safety, which is hugely important in rail, obviously. They can be a better motivation. Actually, a lot of these things are about productivity. The big challenge in rail at the moment is all about productivity. How do we get to be more productive, i.e. convince the government that we're actually a really, really good investment? We struggle with that at the moment. And then actually, if you go to 40%, and it doesn't matter either way, could be female, male or male, female, those benefits get even higher. Strangely enough, the analysis says as soon as you get to 50-50, some of those benefits start dropping off. So it's quite interesting the reasons for change, but clearly what we need to do, where we've got a demographic of 15% female and 85% male, we need to go some way in order to address that balance. So what do we think it's going to look like tomorrow? Well, clearly this is our aspiration. There are a huge number of activities going on. I would say, and I've been working in this industry for 25 years. I know I don't look old enough, but I've been working in it for 25 years. I would say this has only really come to the surface in the last 5 years or less. It's not been something that was on people's agendas at all during the 80s, 90s, 2000s, etc. So it's only been relatively recently that we've started to take diversity seriously. So you can see here's some examples of activities that are already going on. Some of our better colleagues, if you like. That lady there is Lorraine Martins, who is an absolutely inspirational director within Network Rail. She looks after a lot of the diversity. I think she's absolutely superb. And the lady there, who some of you may know, is a lady called Adeline Ginn, who is the leader of Women in Rail. Now, Women in Rail is a fantastic movement. It really is designed to provide women and men to that extent with the tools, with the knowledge, with the capabilities, with the confidence that you can succeed in rail, in spite of the numbers, in spite of the demographics, and frankly, in spite of the what one might term unconscious bias or passive discrimination, which is something that I think the industry has suffered from, continues to suffer from, and it's something that we need to address. So in a word, we want rail to be normal. We want it to reflect society. There's no reason why it can't be. We're hearing about changing skills becoming more digital, less manual, more digital. We've got more mechanization. There is no reason that we have to appoint people like me all the time to do jobs that frankly anyone can do. So, from my perspective, this is what normal looks like. This is where we need to go. Now, I've got the next 3 slides I am going to fly through because they are all kind of things that are happening. So they're initiatives. I assume we can give out the slides at the end of it, but some of the things that we're talking about. Most importantly, there is a leadership group called STAT, which is led by the DfT, and diversity is spoken every month by those industry leaders. That's really, really important. I'll come back to that later. Network Rail setting targets. There are engagement programs. There is blind auditioning going on in HS2, so it's purely about capability and competency and skill. It takes away that unconscious bias. What we've seen at HS2 is there's a 53% increase in shortlisting from the blind auditioning process. It really, really works. There are awards for gender diverse employers, toolkits being developed. Then we come to the really interesting stuff about the way advertising and marketing is used, and the imagery and the wording, and how we can appeal subconsciously, possibly, to more areas of the workforce than we typically have done. So, there's some really, really clever stuff going on at the moment in rail. 20% of rail apprentices are female. That doesn't sound great, but it's an awful lot better than where it used to be. At HS2, the figure's 44%. I think what you'll see as I fly through these, a lot of these initiatives are led by the main players in the industry. That's fine. That's brilliant for them. But the challenge that we face is that there's still probably 60-65% of employers within the industry that do not do what these significant companies will do. And then we get into the situation of saying, well, do we want to put things into contracts? Do we want to encourage the supply chain to take more positive action about how diversity and BAME is kind of treated within the workforces of the future? I think we probably do, because if we left the industry to its own devices, frankly, we'd still be here in 20 years' time talking about the same problem. So, there are some really, really interesting things, and I'm clicking on. So we've got award-winning returners program, reverse mentoring, I think Gemma mentioned earlier. We've got training. There's one at the third one down, improving facilities on site. It's things as basic as putting female toilets into depots, because there weren't any. It's staggering how basic some of this stuff actually is. I wouldn't want you to think that a lot of what we're doing is overtly novel. A lot of it is just really, really basic stuff that recognises that there is a huge amount to do. We have a menopause project that, some of our more innovative companies in the sector advertise on working mums' websites. There's a Hull Trains, for example, and if you travel on Hull Trains, it's led by a brilliant lady called Louise Cheeseman that has a 50% female workforce. Absolutely fantastic. Southern Railway working with Prince's Trust. Polly Payne. So Polly Payne and her colleague Ruth Hannant are the two most powerful civil servants in rail. They are both female and they job share. Polly gave a fantastic speech to the Young Rail Professionals dinner the other night. And what she basically said is, she's virtually never had a 9-to-5, 5-day-a-week job. She's always said, my job will fit into the life I want. So she's had career breaks. She works flexibly. She works term time only. She has done homeworking. And basically what she says is, think about what you want from your life and from your employer, and then ask the question. Because if you ask the question, they can only say no. The chances are you'll start the dialogue, and then you might end up with something that you might actually benefit from. But if you don't ask the question, you'll never get it. So let me sum up, because I think we've got a huge way to go in rail. We really, really do. And it's not just about the stats, and it's not just about the numbers. It is about culture. It is about attitude. It is about saying to the young people in our society, rail is not just about armies of middle-aged men like me in orange jackets going out on a Friday night at 2 a.m, shoveling ballast. That's not where the industry is. That might have been where it was 20 years ago, but not anymore. But we are slowly and very slowly, in some cases, making some progress. Loads of things going on, as I've hopefully demonstrated to you, but it needs to move a hell of a lot quicker. Really, really does. So, now what? Well, if I was going to leave you with anything, I would say we need to do an awful lot more. The big challenge that rail faces is, and this may make some of the more mature members, I mean mature in age, by the way, not in emotional stability. We kind of suffer from the breakup of British Rail. British Rail was very, very good at attracting people, and actually it was very, very good at attracting some of the best talent from university or from some sectors. We suffer because the industry broke up 25 years ago. So now, and some of the bigger companies go to schools and colleges and promote their own organisation, and that's great, but we don't have an industry approach. And I think, where if we're going to make real strides in addressing this diversity challenge that we face, then we need to approach it from an industry perspective. We need to do it. It needs to be led from the top. So, dare I say it, Mr. Grayling needs to start giving us some positive messages. Good luck with that. and the industry leaders. You know, they need to be out there, and we all need to be saying the same things. A single employer approaches are brilliant for their own organisation, but they need to be, you know, we need to be a bit more joined up. We definitely need far more role models. Some of the pictures I've shown you earlier are really, really good role models, and we need to take those role models into schools, into colleges, into universities to say, look, this is not beyond any of you. But finally, absolutely finally, this is about leadership. If leaders don't do anything or they're passive, then nothing will change. You know, I can go to any industry leaders panel and I would say, how many of you industry leaders have a performance-related bonus? And they will all put their hand up. And then I will say, how many of you have a performance-related bonus which has diversity as a key metric? And I can guarantee virtually all of them will put their hand down. So until you get industry leaders actually leading on this, we are going to see some very, very slow progress. And my key takeaway for you all is go back to your own organisations, ask the question about what you're doing, and then ask the question about, is there anything else that can be done? Because there are a huge amount of things that we can do. And hopefully, you'll all be inspired to come and join the railway. And with that, thank you.
Well done, Neil. Thank you very much.